I'm Andrew Sharp. I'm the CEO of Bobux International. I'm also the director of AusStep, which is based in Australia, and director of APAM, which is the Asia Pacific Association for Mentors. So there were three main things that we saw were, I guess, the barrier to New Zealand companies getting offshore, and obviously with Sir Paul Callaghan coming through and talking about the $40 billion extra that we needed as a country to get to the top of the OECD in aged care, health care, education, etc. That's all got to come from exporters, and so we were sort of saying, well, we can be the gap closer, I guess, for those companies getting into the markets. Australia is the first country that most companies go to, because it's perceived that they're very similar to us, but most people don't really have any networks, and I guess that's where Kea comes into it, and the World Class New Zealand group in particular. There's such a fantastic, I guess, passion for Kiwis to help other Kiwis. The biggest one is networks. Sydney in particular, or the New South Wales market in particular, is very much an old boys club. It's which school did you go to? And obviously if you didn't go to school, let alone in Sydney, but in the country, it tends to be a bit harder. And there's so many amazing Kiwis that have done great things in the Australian market. And I think that's where the World Class New Zealand network comes in, and you can actually piggyback, I guess, off their experience. I think there's something like 600,000 Kiwis in Australia, so it's 60% of our diaspora, and I don't think we've harnessed the diaspora that well yet, and I think that's what Kea and the World Class New Zealand is trying to do. Market research is the most important thing. It's not a good enough thing to do is just get on a plane and go and check stuff out and maybe flick an email to someone and say, can you introduce me to the head of Alibaba before I get on a plane to China next week. You've got to look at that and say, well, hang on, which market actually makes sense for my product? What's the USP that I have? When I first started my first business, that question used to come out all the time. What's your USP? And I hated it because we didn't really have one, or we hadn't defined it very well. And so for us, it was really about I guess helping companies to work through that for them, and saying, well, how does that actually fit to this market? It might do really well in the New Zealand market, it might do really well in the States. Does it fit with, firstly, the New South Wales market, then the greater Australian market? And that's another point, is that Australia is not one country and one market for us. It's 5 different markets. Sydney's got as many people as New Zealand, so don't just focus, don't say my Australian strategy is X. Have a state-based strategy, and it's the same with the United States. You don't go, here's my United States strategy. It's 50 different countries that we need to look at and work through that. I think one of the other things that we can look at as a country and how we can do business a little bit better and smarter is that we can combine forces. So the Fonterra model, and so look at, myself alone, I've got X number of dollars, I've got X number of resources and staff, and I've got this sort of product set. I can go and start talking to distributors or agents or customers in another country, and that's okay. If I combined with 2 or 3 other companies that were in the same space but non-competing, and we go as a joint, so like a joint trade mission, I think we get to a state where we've got a little bit more clout. And as I say, that's where Fonterra and the Fonterra model comes into it. You can look at it and say, Fonterra goes to a new country or a new market and says, we are this percentage of the world's dairy exports. I'm not sure if it's 5 or 20, I can't remember, but that's phenomenal. And people then sort of sit there going, oh, hang on, this is a serious player. This is not some little tin pot organisation out of the bottom end of the world. These guys are serious. And I think, as I say, we can take that model and work through. So, for example, with Bobux, we're starting to look at working with other companies in the baby space and say, well, how do we work together to go into these markets? We can go into a distributor and say together, you are targeting these shops. Our product fits this shop, these guys' product, these guys' product, these guys' product. Now together we're a much bigger potential market for you and supplier base for you. We can get better terms and obviously, as I say, we can, I guess, have a bit more clout. I think the way that the Kea network and the World Class network in particular, I guess, can help New Zealand and New Zealand businesses is that, you know, there's 1 million Kiwis offshore, I think, 4.5 million in New Zealand. So I think what we've got to look at is those people that are connected into those networks have great amount of market knowledge, and if they can feed that back to you as a business through the network, obviously it's a much, I guess, they're doing it out of love, they're doing it out of passion for New Zealand, which is great. They're doing it probably for free, which most Kiwis seem to love, and so I think that's important, but also then as introductions to their networks, because obviously when you're in market, when you're overseas, you meet a lot of new people, you make a lot of new connections, and those connections could be absolutely vital and very valuable to New Zealand businesses, and they wouldn't have those without you. And so I guess that's what the central focal point of having Kea and the World Class New Zealand network is all about, is to say we're a point where I guess you've got the supply at one end and the demand at the other, and I guess Kea is essentially a marketplace for that.